Brake rotors. When they get warped, is it better to replace them or have them cut? Today, my guests and I will be discussing the pros and cons of both, and at the end of the video, we'd like to hear your opinion as well. Let's hear what Salem Doyle has to say about this.
Okay, so my opinion when it comes to machining rotors, I don't ever say that you can or can't machine them, but I will say for the most part, I generally do more replacing rotors than I do machining rotors. And the reason why is that 9 times out of 10, when I have to deal with rotors, either the brake pads have worn through and ground on the rotor and it's damaged anyway, or it comes in shaking because the rotors are warped from overheating. And the thing about machining rotors is, though it'll cut the warp out, which will restore it to functioning correctly initially, it removes a little bit of metal, and every bit of metal that you lose makes the rotor that much easier to warp the next time. And if it's already overheated once, meaning that this person is subjecting this rotor to pretty high temperatures, removing metal is very likely to land you back in the same situation sooner than last time. So especially from a professional standpoint where you're dealing with customers, it's just better insurance to replace them under those circumstances. The only times I would generally machine rotors would be if everything is good but the pads are worn down low, or the customer wants to change to a different kind of pad compound, so I need to clean the rotor up so that the pads have a fresh surface to bed into and to remove any old compound that would not mesh well with the new one.
Alright, now let's hear from Aaron from 802 Garage.
Hello Car Simplified viewers, welcome to 802 Garage. Today I'm going to give you my opinion on cutting or resurfacing rotors versus just having them replaced, and I'll tell you up front, I think in most cases you should just go ahead and replace them. The number one reason is cost. It's so easy to get affordable rotors on Amazon or Rock Auto today that it's going to be a much better option than even finding a mechanic who resurface your rotors for probably $20 to $40, which is what a new rotor is going to cost you anyway. So if you know a mechanic who's going to do it for $5 to $10 for you, then sure, get your rotors resurfaced once if you think they're getting on in age, but otherwise just go ahead and buy a new quality rotor. Another reason is that most people are going to get their rotors resurfaced because they think they're warped. But according to my research, warpage doesn't happen as often as people think. Extreme heating and cooling cycles can change the shape of the metal over time, but typically I think it's actually rust or pad deposits or an uneven mating surface. So first of all, most people think a rotor like this is toast, but after a few braking cycles, it would actually be just fine. You can actually see on this side with just a wire brush, it cleaned up quite well. So if your rotors are looking a little worse for wear, try some hard braking cycles first to see if vibration goes away. Pad deposits can build up, especially after hard braking, and those can be taken off by a few braking cycles as well. But also, make very sure that you have clean and even mating surfaces. You can see some buildup right there that you'd want to take off. And on the back side here, obviously that could cause some unevenness mounted on the hub. So even if a car has just been sitting for a bit, rust can actually build up underneath there from water seeping in, and because rust expands, it will cause your rotor to sit unevenly. So try cleaning the mating surfaces first, some hard braking cycles, even a wire brush if you need to, and if your vibration doesn't go away, you may actually have a warped rotor or a problem with your wheel and tire. But in most cases, I'm still just going to buy a new rotor. One other note though, if you do have some nice fancy rotors like these with dimples and slots, I probably would never bother resurfacing them because you'd be getting rid of some of those, and that sort of defeats the purpose of the rotor in the first place. All rotors are going to have a minimum thickness. Make sure you check that before you ever consider getting them resurfaced. And in most cases these days, by the time you want to replace a rotor, you're getting close to it anyways. So don't spend money twice, just buy some new rotors. Thank you for having me, Steven. This was Aaron with 802 Garage, and back to you, Car Simplified.
Alright, great points everyone. The other thing I'd like to add is that when brake rotors warp, they're kind of changing shape, and it's a uniform shape across the entire width of the rotor, which means if you have internally vented rotors, if you cut them, that internal vent will also kind of wiggle back and forth even after the cutting has been done, because nothing has been changed about the inside, it's just been flattened on the outside. That means there are going to be uneven thicknesses of metal throughout the rotor. A thicker portion of the rotor is going to hold that heat for a long time, whereas the thin portion is going to disperse that heat real quick. That uneven level of heat can cause the rotor to warp even faster than it did before. Generally, there's only so much they'll cut off of a rotor before they won't do anything to it, or at least they aren't supposed to do anything to it because it's bad at that point. So the wave isn't going to get too extreme, but sometimes those specs just don't get looked up. It's not great for them to do that because with brakes it's really important to get that right. Brakes tend to get a little more attention than most things because of how much safety is involved with them, but you never know. I'd like to thank Aaron from 802 Garage and Salem Doyle for coming on to this Carmunity discussion today, and I hope you join in as well in the comments. Check out the links provided to see their channels, and the three of us will see you in our next videos. Thanks for watching.